Constas, Labuschagne or Inglis? That's the challenging question heading into the World Test Championship final against South Africa at Lord's starting on June 11. It's the culmination of the 2-year WTC, with the Proteas finishing on top of the points table without having to face England or Australia. The Aussies, on the other hand, had to grind their way for the right to a championship defence the hard way, opening with a drawn Ashes series in the motherland and knocking off a feisty Jasprit Bumrah-inspired India last summer. Do the Australian selectors go with exposed IPL form and roll the dice with Josh Inglis? Or do they look to the long-term future in Sam Constas? Or does Marnus Labuschagne partner Usman Khawaja at the top of the order, allowing selectors to swing in all-rounder Bo Webster? It's a spicy matchup of two of Test cricket's bitter rivals. Kagiso Rabada, a villain of the past, is coming off a failed drug test in the IPL and is sure to be the focus of Aussie angst. Welcome to the West Sports Show Special Edition. We are brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. I'm excited. I am joined by the West Australian's chief cricket writer, Jackson Barrett. How are you?
Hello, mate. How are you? It's good to be back talking cricket.
We are talking cricket.
Infiltrated the footy program for a little bit.
We have. So we've got the World Test Final at Lord's starting next Wednesday, June 11. Really excited about this one. A lot of conjecture over the makeup of the two teams, Jacko.
Yeah.
But let's start with how they got there. So let's start with South Africa. A lot of people saying they don't belong in this final. Do you agree?
Well, there's a couple of points of interest. The main one is that they didn't play Australia or England, which is just how things kind of shake out in the cycle a little bit.
Soft.
They got a soft draw. But it's also worth noting with South Africa that one of their series defeats was, I think it might have been their only series defeat, was to New Zealand. And that actually clashed with the SA20 and they sent a ridiculous, probably a third or fourth string side, gave out a whole heap of caps. And basically none of these guys, I think really except for Bettingham and maybe they could claim Dazorzi, have stayed in the side since that bizarre group that they took to New Zealand. So with that in mind, they've done well to get there, but they've had a far softer draw than some teams like the Aussies.
Well, let's go through it. So a win over India to start the cycle. That's a
nice way to kick it off.
A 1-0 win over India at home. That loss to New Zealand you were talking about, 0-2 away. A win over the West Indies away, 1-0. A win over Bangladesh, 2-0 away. Win over Sri Lanka, 2-0 at home. I think that was at home, and a win over Pakistan, 2-0 at home. So that's 7 Test victories in a row.
Yeah, it's a nice run in. They sealed it nice and early. They were the first team into the final, so Australia knew what they were up against while they were playing India, and they finished on top of the ladder. So as nice as that draw is, you can only beat who you play, and they did it nice and early and sealed their spot pretty quickly. Qualified
first, and then came Australia. So draw with England, that away series, Ashes series 2-all. A win over Pakistan, 3-0. Draw with the West Indies here at home, 1-1. Win over New Zealand, 2-0 away. A win over India, of course, over the summer, 3-1 at home. And a win over Sri Lanka, 2-0 away. So pretty solid for Australia.
Yeah, it was a good cycle. I mean, when you think about the difficulties that the Ashes present, that India at home present, we hadn't beaten them here for a decade, so that was an extraordinary summer that we followed along with, and that really set them up there. I mean, it looked a little bit dicey after they lost the Perth Test. They had to do a lot of work to get back into it. That really famous win at Melbourne basically put them on their way. They sealed it in Sydney, and they went on to really pull apart Sri Lanka in those 2 tests in Galle in January. So a really good cycle, a really strong cycle from Australia with a really set group of guys. Like, it's as stable as the top 6 other than the opening position after Warner retired. Otherwise, this team has been perfectly stable that whole time, and Green coming out with injury. But they've had next soldier up. We learnt a little bit about this group in the home summer, and that makes this all the more interesting. This is one of the great puzzles Australia's team at the moment. They've gathered in London this week. They spent a week together in Scotland.
Some have been in the IPL, but we'll touch on that in a little while.
Correct, yeah. They're kind of just filtering in now, so the final players will be landing in London basically as we speak. The group train together now. And we're not really any closer to knowing what the batting order looks like. There's kind of only 2 spots nailed down, so there's plenty up in the air still.
The boys used to stay at the Royal Thistle in High Street, Kensington, because it's just across the park from where I was living. So when the Ashes were in England, I'd wander across there often, go for a bit of a run, whatever, just in the hope of
right in the thick of
bumping into a few of them. Never did. I actually saw them coming out of the hotel a couple
You might
of
have
times.
more luck on some of London's golf courses.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would indeed. So let's look at the makeup of these two teams. We've got, well, let's have a ping at South Africa and tell me what you think.
Yep.
So Markram and De Zorzi, the openers. Ryan Rickelton comes in at number 3. Tristan Stubbs, Temba Bavuma, David Bettingham, Kyle Verreynne, Marco Jansen, Dane Patterson, Maharaj, the spinner, and then Kagiso Rabada, the elder statesman of that team.
I think you're pretty well spot on there. The big question mark is the third seamer for South Africa going in. So normally that would be Gerald Coetzee. He has been injured for a little while. He returned for the Mumbai Indians, for Gujarat rather, in the IPL. They basically just felt like he didn't have enough cricket under his belt. And Lungi Ngidi, who we know has been on a couple of tours of Australia, has played plenty of cricket against Australia, was picked in that final squad ahead of him. So that kind of comes down to him and Patterson in that side now. So I think that it's a genuine 50-50 from what I'm hearing. I think Ngidi probably has a little bit more experience under his belt, but Patterson's a really crafty bowler. He's not rapid quick, but he makes things happen. He's got some tricks up his sleeve. And I think it sounds as if the teams are kind of bracing for this to be a pretty good batting wicket. Okay. And I think Patterson might just offer something a little bit different through the middle overs once Rabada and Jansen have gone to work with him.
So you've got some slope, the famous slope there. You've also got, does take a bit of turn, day 4. So we'll get into some matchups, but it could suit Nathan Lyon perhaps in the second innings could play a big role here. No room for Corbin Bosch, the all-rounder, the seasoned all-rounder in that team.
I think he's probably the one that misses out. Their top 6 has been really, really steady. Even like Bettingham down at 6 has been their leading run scorer in the cycle, averaging 34, which I mean isn't super impressive. But Tony De Zorzi's domestic form has been really good, and he's done enough to partner Markram. And then Rickelton and Stubbs and Bavuma, who's had one of his best just coming off one of his best calendar years of his career, they're pretty well locked away in that engine room, like the 3 to 5. So I think Bosch is probably the one that misses out. They bat nice and deep with Jansen's batting capability and even the batting capability of Keshav Maharaj as well. So they certainly won't be worried about that. Maybe a little bit on the bowling side. But I think they'll probably back in that group of quicks.
One of the great names in cricket, Maharaj.
Love it. Very good.
Oh,
yes.
Fantastic.
One of the great celebrators
So,
too.
Bit of spice in this. There's always a bit of spice with the Aussies in South Africa. We go back to the famous Cape Town test. That series, actually, Rabada had that mid-pitch stoush.
With Steve Smith?
With Steve Smith, copped the ban and then it was overturned on appeal. Has failed a drug test in the IPL just recently. The old nose beers, I think it was. So Aussies, surely they bring this up.
I would think it gets mentioned. I heard it mentioned in an interview with Pat Cummins that was released this week, and he played a pretty straight bat to it, but I'm not sure that would be the case out there. I think it might be brought up. I would suggest that he's fairly lucky to be playing in this game of cricket.
Missed 4 matches.
Yeah, he was back by the end of the IPL, or certainly eligible by the end of the IPL. South Africa were pulled out for a camp, but probably a little bit lenient. Certainly the punishment hasn't been Australia has a pretty stringent record on punishing cricketers, as we know out of that Cape Town test and other incidents. This wasn't looked on quite as harshly.
Likes playing Australia too, 49 wickets in tests at 23. Pretty good record.
One of those guys where and Coley's the other one that comes to mind, where people go, I wish he's got that Australian about him. And I don't know how much is actually in that, but he's just up for the fight. He's a real scrapper, and he'll bring the heat to this final, both in like the energy and also his incredible talents with the new ball as well.
The Darren Goff of his day.
Yes.
The token Aussie, The Australian side, so a lot of intrigue about this team. I think we can lock in. Well, we can't lock in the opener yet. So
No.
this is what I think will happen. I've got Constas and Khawaja opening. I'm going with Labuschagne at 3.
Okay.
Which means Smith 4. We know Smith's a lock at 4. Travis Head, Cameron Green comes in the middle order. Alex Carey, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Stark, Nathan Lyon, Josh Hazelwood. That's mine. Now, of course, the conjecture is over what that upper order looks like. So does Sam Constas open? Does Josh Inglis come in? The other point, can someone else open? Is it Labuschagne? And so there's a shuffle of the order. That way you could find a spot for Bo Webster as that all-rounder. So
I think Webster is actually the point of conjecture here, and I think that will shape what they do, because if they feel like they don't need Webster, they will be able to fit in the extra bat and, like your side that you've got there, play whether it's Constas or I'll make a case for Inglis later on, or anyone else in that opening spot, and have Labuschagne in his customary number 3 position. But if they play Webster, then you can only pick one, and it has to be either Labuschagne out or Labuschagne opening. So it really comes down to what they want to do with Webster. The big point here with Webster is I think there are 2 factors. One is what they make of the wicket and what they make of Josh Hazelwood's fitness. So just on Lords, clearly it's got the slope. Normally they leave a little bit of grass on it, but it's a little bit drier over there, at this time of year, and also this season particularly. So Middlesex, Lords, is their home ground in County Division 2. Just a couple of the scores from their 6 games to start the season. There's a 407, 359, 329, 470, 473, 366. There's a couple of low ones, but they generally hover above the 320 mark in scores there, and already this season. So I think it's a pretty good batting wicket, and a lot of people who have played a lot of cricket there say that once you get through the new ball and once you get through the first day, it can become quite a good batting deck. So I think the fear for Australia would be that their bowlers are really stretched, and they do actually need Webster to provide something a little bit different in the middle overs. The other part of that is Hazelwood. So Hazelwood missed a decent chunk of the IPL with a shoulder niggle. He came back and ended up becoming an IPL champion with RCB just the other night, but he did miss a decent chunk of that. So his fitness is up to bowling 4 over spells. Is he ready to bowl 40 overs? That's another question. So Scott Boland is the fitter of those 2 at the moment. I think Hazelwood probably does play, but I think that'll significantly boost the chances of Webster playing.
And does Green not bowling boost the chances of Webster playing?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, this wouldn't be an issue if Cam Green was bowling, because he would come in, provide the bowling support, bat wherever they needed him to, and they'd be away. So Green's really the slider in this order. And McDonald has said that he could open, he could bat 3, he could bat 5, he could bat 6. So the 2 guys that are nailed down are Usman Khawaja, we know will open their batting, and Steve Smith, Pat Cummins is now confirmed, will bat number 4. Yeah. So they're the magnets that are locked in. Those ones are in permanent marker. What happens around that is a completely different matter. So I've got my preferred team would be Khawaja opens with Josh Inglis. I'll explain that in a sec, but Green at 3.
West Aussies, you're just biased towards the West Aussies.
Yeah. Green, I like to think there's some evidence behind it. Green at 3, Smith, Head, Webster, and then Kerry and onwards. Kerry may even bat ahead of Webster. The case for Inglis is the nature of this one-off series where we haven't played a test match since February is finding guys that are in form but also in the right kind of form. So you look at like what Labuschagne's been doing. Labuschagne played a stint at Glamorgan, played 2 matches in County Div 2s, scored 0, 4 and 23. The 23 was a really ugly dismissal where he found himself open and snicked off with his back hip coming around, and it wasn't pretty. The other one playing County Div 2 is Cam Green, who made 3 centuries, averaged 67 flying. But Inglis, and it's not the right format, so the question is whether it's the right kind of form. But he scored 278 runs in the IPL at 31, which is a very strong T20 average. He took down Jasprit Bumrah in the semi-final, which no one was able to do for the whole Australian summer. And there's a feeling, like talking to people around Inglis, that he probably isn't the ideal opener in red ball cricket. It's not something he's done before. I think he's batted at 3 for WA a couple of times, but as people point out, generally bats 5 and 6. But I think in the one-off nature of this test match, this is going to be about getting your best guys into the side, the guys that are in the right kind of form. And to be honest, I think the way that Inglis took down Bumrah in the IPL makes me think that he's the man for the job, almost like Constas did in Melbourne and Sydney, where it's... I actually heard a great quote from Mark Butcher during the week. He was talking about Bumrah and this upcoming series in England, but he said that just trying to defend Jasprit Bumrah is like inviting the devil over for cake and tea, because he's just going to have his way with you eventually. And I kind of feel the same way a little bit with Rabada in these conditions. And I just wonder if an aggressive opening batsman might be able to just take him down a little bit. Inglis made 100 on Test debut in Sri Lanka, and I just think I don't think they'll go this way, but I would like the bold decision to be made and for him to open the batting.
Yeah, Constas v Bumrah. And the whole point of my read on it was that he's always going to be dropped for Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
But he was always going to come back from this test. Do you experiment in this test? No. Do you don't want to change things to up? No. But we're not getting any younger, this team.
Yeah, I just think it's more about finding the guys that are in the best position
right now
to play this 5 days of cricket. The new test cycle starts with a 3-match series of the West Indies. It starts later this month. That's a completely different task and a completely different situation, and I would be stunned if Constas isn't opening the batting in that.
Yeah,
but I think there's
test,
I think there's room for them to get a little bit funky here to make sure that the best 6 batters are in the team.
That's I believe that's who you want.
That's who I want.
Who do you think the selectors
I think Labuschagne opens the batting.
Okay.
So he's scored 2 50s from his 3 knocks at Lords, which I think will work in his favour.
Khawaja, and then Green.
I've got Green
and
at
then,
3.
And you think they'll play Webster?
I think Webster plays,
Yep,
yeah.
okay.
And yeah, I think, look, they've had great faith in Labuschagne over the years. They tend to find reasons to pick guys rather than to
28 tests
drop
without
guys.
a ton. I mean, we know his record is good, but then that recent county form, and your argument is you want players who are in form at this time.
The county form does genuinely worry me. He played a Shield final, took some personal leave to welcome his second child, and then went back to Glamorgan and really battled. And that's a place that he's feasted in previous years. So it appears to me that he's like still tinkering with his game a little bit, and I don't think that's the kind of position you want to be in coming into a final like this.
So when I was living in London with my beautiful wife, Lisa, one of our favourite things to do on a Sunday was just go for a walk.
Yeah.
I lived in Bayswater. It's a couple of suburbs away from St John's Wood. So we'd walk along the canals through Little Venice, and we'd pop up at St John's Wood and Lords and the famous Beatles Crossroad. And I have seen a couple of tests at Lords. Nothing prepares you when you walk in the gates at Lords for the slope.
Okay.
The first thing you and people talk about it all the time for a reason. When you get there and you see the ground, you say, no.
Right.
This is not Lords. This is not. You cannot play a test on that wicket.
Really?
So that's just it's really pronounced, and you look at it straight away and you think Terry Alderman v Gooch, bowling into the slope. It's no wonder.
Well, batters do say that it feels like the ball's just constantly either coming into you or just getting away from you all the time, which is exactly how you can imagine they feel. So, yeah, that'll certainly have an impact. And I think the big matchup is South Africa's new ball bowlers. So Jansen and Rabada are pretty comfortably the 2 best players in this side at the moment, the 2 biggest weapons that they've got. And as we just discussed, the kind of deficiency, if there is one in this pretty strong Australian side at the moment, is the top of the order. There's a quote from Vernon Philander I want to have a look at. So South African great, legendary swing bowler, has had a bit of a shot across the bow at Australia. Part of this quote says, Australia have a bit of a defect against the moving ball technically and mentally. He goes on to say, so the Proteas bowlers will certainly want to exploit that. Marnus Labuschagne has been short of runs, as has Steve Smith to an extent in the previous couple of seasons. So there's a window of opportunity there. Their shortfalls will be in the back of their mind. And I think that's fair. I think that's where South Africa have the best opportunity to get on top. I think our batting group as a whole probably has the edge on theirs, but it's Jansen and Rabada with the new ball.
Let's look at some of those matches. Let's look at some of the key matchups. Let's call them matchups. And we've got Rabada v Khawaja. So is he his bunny? He's got him 5 times in 10 tests. He's got him. Gets a lot of steep bounce. Khawaja, of course, the leading run scorer for Australia in the World Test Championship cycle with 14.22 runs. So that's going to be, as you say, the new ball.
Yeah, that'll be pivotal. Like, Khawaja had a pretty strong summer, as we know, enough to hold his spot, or it's particularly later, and then was excellent in Sri Lanka, and that's bought him a little bit of time. It certainly brought him through to the Ashes, you would think. But the issue with Khawaja is the slightly quicker bowlers, the slightly steeper bounce, the ones where his hands just kind of follow it a little bit, the ones where his feet come off the ground and he seems to like lose a little bit of balance. So 5 times in 10 tests is a really good rate, like a remarkable rate. And I think Rabada will cause some grief. And Jansen as well. Yeah. Jansen, like steep bounce. He's a massive man.
Height and angle. I've got here Steve Smith. So in imperious form, Steve Smith, but 29 wickets in 6 tests this cycle. Jansen, height and angle a threat to the right-hander. So Steve Smith perhaps early with that. He shuffles and fidgets throughout his innings, but particularly early.
Well, if you look back to the Ashes last year, Smith and Labuschagne and Khawaja all battled early last year. Rabada's taken 47 wickets at less than 20, so he's flying as well. It's a really, really impressive new ball combination. What comes after that is the next thing. Like, as we said, we don't think they'll pick an all-rounder, and then the third seamer is probably where they fall down a little bit. But if they can take wickets with a new ball and leave Australia in a bit of strife, they'll be right in the contest.
Of course, we know the Aussies can do exactly the same, Jacko. Pat Cummins, 73 wickets in this cycle. Just pace, metronomic accuracy, just wears you down. Little bit like Glenn McGrath used to. Different bowler, but a little bit like that. Temba Bavuma, so missed some early tests in this cycle, but has found form, 609 runs at 60 plus. That battle.
Yeah, Bavuma for a long time was this guy that couldn't convert big scores, and he was always around the mark, and his average looked okay. But he took over the captaincy, and for quite a while with the captaincy, he really battled to convert big scores, and suddenly he's learnt to do that. So he scored more than 500 runs in the last calendar year. I think it was only the third time in his career that he's done that. So he's in good nick. He's obviously a shorter statured guy, and naturally there are going to be challenges with one, the slope, and two, the three big, tall Aussie quicks, whichever way they go at the selection table. They're all big humans. And I think they will cause him a little bit of grief. The other thing is, like, Stubbs has played a lot of IPL and a lot of franchise cricket, so he has exposed form. He actually played with Mitchell Starc at Delhi. Yep. But guys like Tony DeZorzi, another small statured man, Ryan Rickleton, and even Bettingham, who has been pretty good. He's got 645 runs in the cycle. Remember, they haven't played Australia or England in this cycle, so that, like, extreme pace. They played India in the first test. They haven't faced any of the 6 or 7 best fast bowlers in the world for the whole cycle. So I think that'll be a test. Or
Bettingham and Stubbs in that middle order, or a class spinner in the second innings. So this is where Nathan Lyon can come into this game.
Yeah, Australia lean heavily on Nathan Lyon in England, probably more so than you'd realise. And I think that was brought to light in the last Ashes series, where he did his calf at Lords, and Todd Murphy bowled basically the rest of the series, and it just wasn't like the attack just didn't keep at England like it does normally. So yeah, I think Lyon's incredibly crucial. He is going to be real, like, by all reports, has just been grinding away. Spent time at the academy in Brisbane. They seem to be coming out really well. I think Australia's attack all around is pretty well primed. Other than Hazelwood, Starc came home from the IPL and didn't return. He was involved in that game with the blackout up at Dharamshala and didn't go back, but went back to the academy in Queensland and worked away. Hazelwood came back briefly, spent time up there working away before he went back to Bangalore. So these guys are in pretty good nick. Like, they've trained for the first time in London overnight, and by all reports, Scott Boland looking as quick as ever. Which is another factor to what Scott Boland does. He's battled a little bit in his at test level in the UK, but he'll be fine if they decide to go that way. So yeah, it's a pretty scary attack. As much as these new ball guys are a big threat for South Africa, this Australian attack is looking scary.
So Rickleton, they're number 3, 451 runs in the cycle, 259 against Pakistan. Lefty will take on Stark. He'll look to take him. So if they get into the upper order early, the top order early, Mitch Stark poses a threat there. Perhaps to the left armour.
Yeah, I think Rickleton will be important to what they do. Like Markram and Dazorzi will get after it as well. Dazorzi's technically pretty good. Markram, we know, is a strong man who has seen all these bowlers before. So Rickleton's kind of their trump card a little bit. Rickleton and Stubbs, both pretty powerful guys that get after it. So I don't think, a lot of Test cricket in the UK over the last little bit has been, you're not ticking along at 2 runs and over. The decks are pretty good. Batters are incentivised to get after it a little bit. Even Zimbabwe were going along at a decent clip in their test against England a couple of weeks ago. So, I think this game's going to move pretty quickly, and that'll be largely down to that South Africa top 4 that'll get after it.
So, tail of the tape. Overall, Australia 54 wins, South Africa 26. Last 10 years, Australia 4 wins, South Africa 5. And the records in England since 2015, Australia 7 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws. South Africa 2 wins, 5 losses. Who's your prediction? What's your prediction?
I'll take Australia, but not comfortably. I think Australia's top order are going to have a lot of issues, but I think the steady hand of their middle order, so Smith down through to Kerry, I think will be crucial in getting it done.
I'm going Australia, and I'm saying poised in the second innings, and out comes Cam Green and smashes a very historic ton at Lords.
So first test for 16 months for Cam Green, which will be really good to see. He was
so he's had that surgery,
Gloucestershire,
and so he's just still conditioning him towards bowling. He's not going to bowl in this test.
Well, the news overnight from the reporters that are over in London is that he bowled for the first time since October when he had the surgery, just off a few paces, rolling the arm over, but he did bowl at training, which was a very welcome sight. They won't worry an awful lot about that. They'll build him up towards the Ashes series.
West Indies?
I don't think he'll bowl in the West Indies. Yeah. He'll probably do some conditioning around that. And it was interesting to note yesterday the T20 squad came out for a series that's tacked onto the end of those Windies games. And my gut was that they would bring Green home for more conditioning, but he's actually going to stay on and play those.
So he just limited overs in those.
Yeah, I don't think they're nursing him through. He might bowl towards the back end of that, but they've got their eyes towards the Ashes series.
The Ashes series. Logjam, Ticketek meltdown.
Yeah.
But a lot really good sales early, and particularly from the UK.
Yeah, I think the travelling party will be massive at the moment. The feeling, India are over in the UK and they play them towards the end of the month in a 5-test series, which will be epic, but it feels like the feeling in the UK is that the Ashes is still the thing. I don't think they rate these India series as highly as we do. So I think the Ashes will be massive on their radar. So I think the travelling groups will be pretty good. I heard a stat this week, the crowd numbers for the Border Gavaskar Trophy last summer would have filled Lords 21 days in a row, just selling it out constantly. So I think it's going to be massive this summer. We get to start it in Perth. We learnt last summer, the big takeaway from the Perth test last summer was that Perth becomes the centre of the cricket world for 10 days before the first test.
It started on a Friday.
Yeah.
Not on a Thursday.
I think the Ashes is going to be...
Oh, I can't wait. And women's test at the WACA.
Yeah, there's a bit of a push on for the WACA to become like the home of women's cricket in Australia. And I think that's really important. They played South Africa there a couple of years ago during the redevelopment. The Ashes test was a day-nighter at the MCG. My understanding is that Cricket Australia were keen to get back to the MCG, but it didn't work with the footy schedule, with the start of the footy season. So the WACA 4-day test from March 6, Australia v England. I know the WACA's keen to make this a real hub for women's international cricket. It's the right size. It's a good sporting wicket. The facilities have been upgraded. And I spoke to Alana King this week and she backed that as well. She wants to play there as much as possible. So I think it's the perfect size. Perth people show out. They lead the WBBL for attendance to scorchers. I think people here just get around events, get around stuff. And I think the redeveloped WACA, it's perfect hard launch. Is
coming along. And any update on who's first down the new water slide?
I thought it might be you.
No, it's not me. No. I think they need a cricket writing celebrity.
I might be first in the indoor nets.
Okay.
Yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, I've played at Lords. Do you know I played at Lords? Yeah, in the indoor nets.
In the indoor nets.
Yeah. The Lords Tavern is
How'd you
indoor
hit
nets. It was a bowling machine, but I hit them all right, mate. Yeah. No, one of my favourite parts of the world. It's a beautiful place. Anyone going over there is very lucky this weekend. A bit more news. So we spoke about the IPL before. Virat Kohli, an emotional win. 16 years with RCB and not losing 4 finals, did we say? Three finals.
I think,
finally got there. Josh Hazlewood, a teammate. Sadly for the challengers, Inglis and Stoinis, 2 West Aussies on the losing side.
Yeah, so RCB is a fascinating one. They were always compared to the Melbourne Stars in the Big Bash, like the celebrity team. For a while, they had Warner, they had Kohli, not Warner, sorry. They had Kohli and De Villiers and just this incredible side. And this year they felt like they kind of moved away from that a little bit. And
a team of champions instead of being a champion team.
They kind of built around Kohli, whose commitments were less, and he played the whole tournament and he was fantastic. So that was really cool to see. I was behind Punjab because Josh Inglis was batting at 3 and had a really good tournament, and Marcus Stoinis was in the middle order. They couldn't quite get it done. The Ricky Ponting coached Punjab Kings. I've actually always had an eye on the Punjab Kings because Sean Marsh started there. They had a stack of WA guys. I think Marsh and Johnson might have played there in the first year. Adam Gilchrist was there for a while. So they couldn't get it done. But yeah, it was a nice story seeing.
You watch much of the IPL?
I tend to keep an eye on the Aussie guys.
Yeah.
Like Mitch Marsh has sucked me in a couple of times. If he opens the batting, I'll watch it and he'll make a 50 ball 70 in, and suddenly I'm up all night. I don't get a lot of it, but I enjoy following it.
It's a different universe, isn't it?
It is. It's a whole other world over there.
We know we go nuts over here, the Scorchers, but it's just next level.
Well, the game we spoke about before with the blackout in Dharamshala, it had actually rained earlier that day, and it's pelting down in the early stage. What would be the early stages of this match? The toss was delayed, but the stands, which were completely uncovered, were full. Just people waiting for something to happen. And at that stage, it didn't look like they did. They ended up playing a bit of cricket. But I was marveling at the 60,000 people just sitting out in the rain, in the Asian rain, just waiting for a little bit of a glimpse. They love it over there. It's brilliant. It would be good fun to get over there at one point.
I sat on Boxing Day for about two and a bit sessions in the rain one day with no play, and my wife and my mate were with me and saying, "Come on, Glenn, concede."
Yeah,
I eventually did. Is that sad that I stayed for so long?
No, I think that's good. You got to back it in.
It's not far from. You can just go up to the Hilton and have a beer or something. Just down the road. You could probably anyway. I don't know. Glen Maxwell retirement from ODIs during the week. Still contracted with Cricket Australia to play T20 internationals and next year's World Cup. What a great showman! I'm pleased he's still playing for Australia, at least in the most limited form of the game. I always think with Maxi, I would have liked to have seen him play more Test cricket.
I think that's the great what if of Maxi's career. But he kind of made a name for himself in one day. He became known as a T20 cricketer, but he's a 2-time World Cup winner. In the format, he basically wheeled Australia through to the final of the 23 World Cup with that incredible knock in Mumbai against Afghanistan, the double century on one leg, which will end up being one of the most replayed innings in Australian cricket history. It was remarkable. An excellent career. He'll still go around a little bit. I would say he's leaving the very slim Test door open for himself for some subcontinental tours. I know that's the one he has really, really wanted and never really got to go. But it's interesting where ODIs sit in cricket at the moment is an interesting discussion. Rohit and Kohli are now only playing one days because they're building towards the next World Cup, but Maxi and Steve Smith have both recently decided to go the other way.
Finally, why are you sitting here? Why aren't you over at Lords?
You have to run that one up the chain.
Maybe next time.
Yes.
In the next cycle. Thanks for your time, Jacko. This has been the West Sports Show. We have been brought to you by Tab Touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. And remember, you can watch or listen to myself and Jacko on YouTube Music. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Jacko, let's come back. Let's reconvene after the World Test Championship final.
Let's do it after an Australian win.
Yes, let's hope so.